So welcome to the 5th edition of the RCA Training Tips Show, where every Wednesday Aussie time, I'm going to be your YouTube road cycling coach and host of the show, Cam Nichols. So, how do you roll turns like a pro? In this video today, we're going to analyse one of the top professional road cyclists in the world from Team Lotto Soudal, Caleb Ewan, rolling turns when he was in my hometown of Noosa here in Queensland, Australia, during the professional off-season only a few months ago now. In addition to watching Caleb roll turns in this video today, we're also going to be discussing exactly how far off the wheel you should be sitting when in a bunch ride or rolling turns. In doing so, I'll be referencing a few comprehensive studies that have been completed in this space, and also this video gives us a chance to reminisce on what it was once like to be outdoors, rolling turns in a local weekend bunchy. Let's just have a listen for a second and reminisce. Man, they were great times. Now, a quick shout out here to Caleb Ewan. I know he's probably not watching, but after this bunch ride, the bunch ride we're going to be dissecting today, I did actually pull him up at a petrol station because I rode with him on an endurance ride after the bunch ride and said, hey, I've got some footage of you today. Would you mind if I shared it with the audience? And being the legend that he is, he said, of course, absolutely, go for it. So this is the third video we've now done analysing what Caleb has done in this bunch ride. If you've missed the first two, I'll link to them below. They've been very popular. So I just wanted to say a massive shout out and thank you to Caleb Ewan. Now, before we get into the Caleb footage, I just wanted to show you some footage of another bunch ride. And this footage was sent in to me by one of the members of the Road Cycling Academy's up-level road cycling course, who recently took his FTP from 218 to 300 watts in 17 weeks. And here you'll see what that power output has enabled him to do on the road, stepping out of his local bunch ride a number of weeks ago now and going off the front with a Continental rider. Not bad for a bloke that took up road cycling just over 18 months ago. So if you're also looking to take your road cycling performance to the next level, just like this guy did, I've just reopened the same course that he did, the up-level road cycling course. I welcome in 10 new members every single month. So it's open for April. I've now got 8 spots left. Links below, and just know I've just created I've got a number of programs at the end of that course, but there's one now that's specifically 100% indoors. It's focused on a combination of base training and high intensity to ensure that your engine is raring to go in preparation for events and races to be reinstated, fingers crossed, later on this year. So let's get into the footage. So this is the Noosa Saturday bunch ride, which happens along David Low Way in the Sunshine Coast area every Saturday morning, albeit it is on pause for the time being. However, this particular bunch ride was early January this year, and there you can see Caleb Ewan rolling towards the front. As per normal today, I will be skipping forward, pausing and slowing down the footage at times so we can make the most of our time together here. Very importantly, before we analyse how to roll turns like a pro, let's discuss how far off the wheel you should be before you actually get to the front and roll a turn. Here I'm going to pull up a graphic which represents different studies that have been completed for drag reduction in relation to the amount of centimetres you're sitting off a wheel. Now, obviously, there is always going to be some grey, as what we're discussing here will depend on the rider you're sitting behind, the type of rider you are, how many riders are in the group, etc. So if you want to delve into the details of all these studies, I'll provide a link below. However, if we make some conclusions from what we have here in front of us, some studies indicate the closer you are, the better, while others are suggesting being a little bit off the wheel will actually give you greater gains. Now, if we implement some common sense here also, knowing that sitting 0 centimetres off the wheel in front of you isn't a good idea, and let's ensure you're never overlapping wheels because you might end up doing what I did. From these studies, it is difficult to conclude definitively what the optimal distance is to keep between your front wheel and the back wheel of the rider ahead. We also obviously need to take into consideration some common sense. All that said, I'm going to make a call that within 30 to 50 centimetres of the rear wheel of the rider ahead, you should be getting a large enough benefit without risking your own safety. Or you could even say roughly 1 to 2 30 centimetre ruler lengths is a great way to also look at it. So as you can see, Caleb's sitting somewhere between the 30 to 50 centimetre mark. Yes, it is hard to be 100% here on video review, but Caleb looks to be bang on, and so are the other riders coming from behind. Of course, with an open bunch ride, you're not going to see it perfectly from every rider, but all in all, everyone's doing a pretty good job here. Now, here's an interesting little section you're seeing from an elite bike rider by the name of Freddie Ovett making an executive decision to fill a gap. He moves his head to the right-hand side first to see what probably would have been a 2 bike length gap and moves across. A welcome move in a rolling turns bunch provided there's safe distance, and there certainly was in this instance. Ideally though, a way to mitigate these gaps from opening, if you're in the rolling turns, calling the next rider in as you roll past so they know when to step out is always a good thing to implement. Just say something like, "Yep," as you roll past. Let's now analyse the way Caleb Ewan rolls a turn. Here we're at a set of traffic lights and you're about to see me butt in behind the little champ for YouTube viewing pleasure. Now I'm just going to pause here quickly to ask, if you're getting good value out of this video today, could you please give it a like and also consider subscribing below if you already have not. So there's a couple of interesting things we can discuss here, but I have a question for you first. Now, what would you say is the most important thing you can do when riding in a bunch and rolling turns? I'm going to give you 5 seconds with some elevator music to take a guess. Be predictable. Now, what's the flow-on effect from being predictable? You ride with consideration of others. You're cultivating a safe environment. You're reliable and trustworthy on the road. You set a good example to inexperienced riders. The list goes on, and I'm sure you now get my point. Now, before I show you the way a pro does it, like Caleb Ewan, let's look at what unpredictable behaviour in rolling turns can look like. Now, I don't mean to single out this rider here, but seriously, this was a silly move that put himself and others in danger. Here, we're rolling turns and you can see this rider steps out away from the rolling turns further out into the road without even looking. Get off the road! This is unpredictable riding. What's the flow-on effect from this unpredictable behaviour? Well, for starters, he's left me with a gap to close, disrupting the flow of the rolling turns. More importantly, he's completely stepped off his line, risking his own safety and the safety of others by moving out onto the road without even looking. He's actually lucky that car wasn't closer, otherwise things could have been a whole lot different. In addition to risking his safety and the bunches, how about the reputation of cyclists on the road? That's the type of behaviour that gives motorists a good reason to get frustrated and fuels the continued anger many of us receive out on the road. If that rider was predictable, however, that would have never have happened. So back to watching Caleb here. Now there is a rider up ahead who you will notice surges when he rolls to the front. Yes, we had just stopped at some traffic lights earlier and thus there was a need to lift the pressure of the bunch to get it back up to speed, but the ideal scenario is you lift the pressure gradually. Surging aggressively is unpredictable behaviour and disrupts the flow of the turns and the group. So there's 4 things I would like to point out what Caleb is doing here for his turn. Number 1, Caleb waits for the rider in front to start moving across before he rolls through. Yes, he steps out a touch, but only to ensure he can smoothly roll over without any disruption to the flow. He's being reliable and predictable. He's definitely not riding a metre or 2 out to the right to get around that many seem to do, which of course disrupts the flow of the bunch. Number 2, look how close Caleb is there. There's probably 10 to 20 centimetres between him and another experienced local Aussie rider called Grant Stubbs. Caleb would sense from watching Grant roll that he's going to be predictable and hold his line. Thus, Caleb stays close. So when he moves into Grant's line, it's smooth and predictable, meaning Grant's not having to chase the wheel down when Caleb rolls over. He's immediately in the draft. You see, often when cyclists are rolling through, they are over a metre width across before they start rolling in, meaning they create a gap for the rider they're rolling over to close. That's messy and not predictable, unlike this well-oiled machine you're seeing here. Now, I should point out, you don't necessarily have to be that close. This is pro level you're seeing here, but you also don't want to be more than half a metre across, that's for sure. Number 3, see how Caleb's rear wheel is in line with Grant's front wheel just at the time Caleb starts to roll across. He knows that by the time he's smoothly yet quickly rolled over, travelling around 3 to 5 kilometres per hour faster, he'll be roughly 30 centimetres in front of Grant's wheel. He's been predictable to me and considerate to Grant, who's going to catch the draft immediately. Number 4, Caleb is 10 times stronger than any of us in this bunch today during the rolling turns. And this one you see right here. Do you see Caleb surge at the front at all? Absolutely not. The only time he did this was when no one rolled through and he and the rest of the bunch reached the bottom of a hill where everyone has a crack, meaning the surge you see here was actually predictable behaviour, albeit he dropped me and ripped my legs off. I'll catch you all in the next video.
I got few things, but if you need a dollar bill in your blue jeans, I'ma throw it to you, honey, like a true breeze. I'm just happy that my crib got 2 sinks, cause that's a whole lot more than what I do need. And my gut steady tied like a shoestring. New thing, still jumping like a moon swing. I'ma get it popped up, give a brother 2 weeks, and you'll see it's a doozy. I do freak out about the clout that I don't have. No